Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Energy Quick Chat where we rub minds with stakeholders and players in the energy markets. Now, Africa's global gas market share is expected to rise to over 11% by 2050 from 6% in 2021 and launch the continent's status as a potential anchor of global energy security. This is part of the focus of this year's Egypt Energy Show in Cairo from February 19th to 21st. And joining me now to discuss this is Mickael Vogel, Director and Head of Research at Pan-African Investment Research Agency, Hawilti Limited. Mickael, it's great to catch up with you again. Now, February last year, Hawilti co-launched the Gas for Africa report at the Egypt conference. What are your expectations from this year's Egypt Energy Show?
I think this year is particular in many ways. When you go to a show like that, you usually look at the national, regional, and international context to figure out whether the show is going to be an interesting one or not. This one is particular for three reasons. One, because on the national level, Egypt is experiencing one of its most severe economic crises in a decade. On the regional level, you have the conflict between Hamas and Israel, which is now spilling over the rest of the region. So you have a very tense regional geopolitics at the moment, which affects energy trade, especially because, as you know, Egypt has had a growing energy cooperation with Israel. And last but not least, on more of an international or at least Pan-African level, you have, a growing need by African markets to regionalize their energy trade and cooperation. And Egypt, in that regard, offers a lot of opportunities for deals and cooperation. Bear in mind, Egypt is the biggest refining hub on the continent with a huge petrochemical base. It is the second largest gas producer and it is the fifth largest oil producer. So at a time when a lot of African countries are trying to domesticate their natural resources, monetize them at home and make the best of their oil and gas resources, Egypt offers a very significant pool of expertise and know-how that it could potentially export to the rest of the continent. And that's why this year is so special. And I'll finish with that as the organizers are launching the first African conference dialogue, which is really about establishing that bridge between North and Sub-Saharan African markets that has been in the making and requested for many years. And so it's all of these reasons that make us really eager to be there this year.
So apart from infrastructural issues, what regulatory or policy hurdles must be addressed to attract the right kind of investment and create a thriving African gas market?
Gas is a tricky business because you have lots of pieces that need to be put together for an investment to be bankable, to make sense, to attract capital and private sector participation and all of that. Which means your policy really needs to look at all of the aspects from supply to processing to transportation to consumption and all of that. On the supply side, I would say some of the key things that the industry is asking for is just faster approvals and just better approval processes that make deals go through the regulatory process a lot faster. So when you acquire a gas block or when you do a merger and acquisition, you don't want to wait for 24 months to get this approved. That's the first thing. The second thing is maybe on unlocking more domestic sources of capital, really working with each country's capital markets to see how we can channel institutional money or private money into gas infrastructure projects. The last thing is and I think to me is the most important one, is how do you regionalize policy frameworks and how do you regionalize the approach to gas? Because gas requires scale to be bankable. A lot of African markets are still working in small isolated islands, and pooling resources could really help create the kind of demand centers you need to justify gas investments moving forward. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is a lot of the gas master plans on the continent are outdated. So we think they need to be updated. And the other thing is you're probably seeing that a lot of African markets are now promoting their own energy transition plans. They're publishing them. They're explaining what their strategy is. And very few of them actually take regionalization into consideration. When to us, especially as we research the continent, we see those regional opportunities are being critical and key to build the kind of resilient and diversified energy mix that the continent needs.
I understand that for these infrastructural investments to be harnessed, it has to be probably based on a country by country basis, right? But how can countries decide on what specific infrastructural investment is needed urgently to boost their natural gas market?
So this, you're going to fall very quickly on case by case basis, because each market is different. However, we would identify specific trends, specific opportunities and gaps. The first one is on the decarbonization of your electricity mix, and especially if you approach foreign investors, foreign stakeholders. The key opportunities here and the key gaps would be in markets like South Africa and Morocco. When you really map out the electricity mix of the continent, you have large economies that really heavily rely on coal and diesel to power to produce electricity and power their industries. Those represent gigawatts of power that can actually be easily switched to gas so that the power gets cheaper and cleaner. So those would be key for countries like Morocco, South Africa, Senegal, potentially Zimbabwe, now that they have found gas onshore there. The second one would be on using gas as an enabler for industrialization. Keep in mind, again, gas is not just used to produce electricity. Gas is used across the economy, across industries, transport, and all of that. So you would then need to look at countries and markets that have a very heavy presence of diesel and heavy fuel oil in their energy mix, especially for industries and transport, and then use gas to displace that imported and dirty fuel. And then you start to speak very quickly about countries like Nigeria, Ghana, or like mining hubs in the SADC region. Last thing beyond those two would be again on the regionalization of gas. And so successful experiences have been very limited, mostly to South Africa, between Mozambique and South Africa. We see a potential to build robust and efficient regional gas trading in East Africa now, especially out of places like Tanzania and Mozambique, who could both provide gas to displace diesel and coal in the rest of the region, but also produce gas at home to then export it as electricity within the regional power pools, which would then use as a balance for climate vulnerable hydropower. And those would be the three main opportunities we see, at least in the years to come.
Thank you, Mickael. But I want to ask, what would you advise on how gas development projects can be structured to ensure that they contribute directly to energy security and also cut energy poverty in Africa?
We think that, in the current context, the most important thing is that your project is structured to be future proof. And what do we mean by that is, how do you ensure that 20 years from now, the gas project that you're building today is still relevant and still makes sense for whatever your energy scenario is going to be by 2040, 2050. What that means is two things: is in terms of the technology you use, making sure that your infrastructure and your asset is able to integrate new energies in the future. So that mostly would be hydrogen. If you take the example of one of the biggest gas to power plant under construction in Africa at the moment, which is the Temane station in Mozambique, it's already being equipped with turbines that can blend hydrogen in the future, which means whatever you're developing now is going to be relevant 20 years from now when hydrogen becomes, cheap and available. The second thing is, how do you integrate your gas project within the larger energy mix? How do you ensure that the gas infrastructure you build today can easily be an enabler for the integration of additional solar, wind, or hydropower moving forward? And if those two things are really taken into consideration and you're able to articulate your project around those objectives, you have a very, very you have much better chances of attracting the right stakeholders and finances.
So what's Hawilti's outlook for the energy sector, even as the world moves towards decarbonization?
It's a tricky question. I'll answer by telling you what are the things that we're currently looking at. The outlook is obviously changing. It depends from region to region. We are increasingly looking at untapped regional opportunities. Regional opportunities in terms of commodities trading, which is, petroleum products and gas mostly, and regional opportunities in terms of electricity trading. So you have regions like North Africa and Central Africa that are very that just lack integration in terms of energy. There's very little electricity trading in Central Africa. There's almost no electricity trading between North African countries. And we really see it as an opportunity to bridge some of the infrastructure gap and build more diversified and resilient energy mix. And this is the kind of projects that we want to see. So some of the projects that we're tracking would be growing interconnection in West Africa, growing interconnection in East Africa. The other thing is on the availability of the supply, especially when it comes to the gas space. We think there is significant suppressed demand for gas, which means industries or economies in need of gas who just cannot access it. And so we want to be seeing now where is the supply going to come from? If you look at a market like Nigeria, which has the largest gas reserves on the continent, the supply is not there. If you look at a region like Southern Africa, there is growing concerns in terms of where the supply is going to come from beyond 2026. There are several options on the table, but we're not really sure if it's going to come from domestic sources. Is it going to have to be imported and all of that? And the same applies to, if we go back to our region in West Africa, even large markets like Ivory Coast are actually increasingly concerned about the gas supply outlook. So these are the things that we really want to look at in terms of how do you make supply available via more exploration, via more cross-border trade, and then potentially via imports as well.
Mickael, thank you so much for coming on Energy Frontiers, and we look forward to speaking again soon. Mickael Vogel is the Director and Head of Research at Pan-African Investment Research Agency, Hawilti Limited. Thank you so much, Mickael.
Thank you, Justina.
And that's it on our Energy Quick Chat. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe to see more videos like this, and follow us across all our social media handles as indicated on the screen. I am Justina Okechukwu. Bye for now.